Picture a kitchen. Small one, working class, laminate table with the little gold flecks in it, the kind your grandmother had, the kind that's been wiped down 10,000 times until the pattern's worn pale in the middle where everybody rests their elbows. There's a smell in this room. Floor wax, damp plaster, and a pot of cheap tea going cold on the counter. The radiator under the window is ticking. It's a Tuesday evening, April 9th, 1985. And outside that window, a slow, steady rain is coming down over the Susquehanna Valley, slicking the asphalt of a quiet little mining town just outside Scranton, Pennsylvania. You can hear it, that soft, even hiss against the glass that, on any other night, would put you right to sleep. And inside this kitchen, it's warm, it's bright, it's safe. That's the part to hold on to, because it doesn't last. A woman named Janet is sitting at that table with two of her daughters. Her 14-year-old Heather has her confirmation coming up, and she's got to memorize her catechism. The prayers, the responses, the whole thing, word for word, the way the church wants it. So Janet's helping her run through it. You know how that goes. Heather stumbles on a line, Janet feeds her the first couple of words, Heather picks it back up, over and over. And the 8-year-old twin, Shannon, she's sitting right there too, leaning over her school books, kicking her feet under the chair the way little kids do when they're bored and content at the same time. It's basically a Norman Rockwell painting. A mom and her girls at the kitchen table, the rain outside, the prayers being whispered into the warm air, the kind of ordinary evening you don't even remember the next morning because nothing happened. Because it was just Tuesday. That's the room. Heather's voice, low and sing-song, working through the words, Shannon's pencil scratching, the rain, the radiator ticking. The first thing to stop is the refrigerator. That low hum you stop hearing because it's always there, it just stops. And in the half second after it stops, the room is so quiet that all three of them look up at the same time. Because their ears noticed it before their brains did. Something is wrong with the sound of the room. Then the temperature drops. It's not a draft, not a window cracked open somewhere. It drops all at once, like somebody opened a freezer the size of the room. Heather stops mid-prayer. Janet feels it on the back of her hands first, then her face, then deep in her chest when she breathes in. And then she sees it, her own breath fogging in front of her face, indoors, in a heated kitchen, in April. 3 little plumes of white, hers and both the girls, hanging in the air over a table where 2 seconds ago it was warm enough to be sleepy. Nobody moves, nobody says a word, because somewhere underneath the fear, a part of every one of them already knows what comes next. They've done this before. They've learned the rhythm of it. The cold is the knock at the door. The cold is the thing announcing itself. Then the light fixture starts to move. Up above the table, there's one of those big industrial fluorescent lights, 4 feet long and heavy, the kind that's screwed deep into the ceiling, anchored into actual wood, the kind that's not going anywhere ever, not even in an earthquake or a hurricane, and it begins to vibrate. Just a little at first, a buzz, a tremor, the plastic diffuser rattling in its frame. Janet's eyes go up to it, both girls' eyes go up to it, and the buzz becomes a hum, becomes a violent mechanical shudder. The whole 4-foot fixture juddering against the plaster, faster and faster, and Janet opens her mouth to say, "Get back." The screws tear out of the ceiling with this awful metallic scream, wood and all, and the entire fixture rips free and comes down. Right onto the table, onto the girls. Glass shattering across the schoolbooks, sparks spitting out of the severed wires, and the kitchen, that warm, bright, safe kitchen, drops into darkness in an instant. And in that darkness, Janet is screaming her daughter's names and clawing across the table through broken glass to find them. She gets to Heather. Heather's okay. Heather's scrambling backward off her chair. And then she reaches for Shannon. And Shannon is slumped over her schoolbooks, not moving. There's a deep, jagged cut across the girl's forehead. And in the dark, Janet can't see how bad it is. She can only feel it, warm and wet under her fingers. And the blood is running down into the open notebook where 2 minutes ago, her daughter was doing long division. And as Janet is pulling her baby up out of the wreckage, as she's pressing her hand to that cut and screaming for Jack, something cold sweeps across the back of her neck. A draft, moving the wrong way, moving toward her, against the still air of the room, and it carries a smell with it. A smell of rotten eggs and spoiled meat. The smell of something that died days ago in a wet place. It rolls over her thick enough to gag on, and then, just as fast, it's gone. Like it leaned in close, took a look at what it had done, and pulled back into the dark to watch. And right there, on her knees in the broken glass, with her daughter bleeding in her arms and that stink fading from her nose, Janet Smurl understood something she had been refusing to understand for a long, long time. That fixture didn't fall. The cold came first. The cold always came first. It announced itself. It waited until all three of them were looking up at it, and then it came down. Not on the empty end of the table, not on the counter, not on the floor, on the children. Whatever was living in the house with them, it had stopped playing games. Welcome back to Paranormal Directive 13. I am your host, Matt, and if this is your first time here, first of all, hello. Glad you found us, and you might want to leave a light on. So what we do on this show is pretty simple. We take the strangest, darkest, most genuinely unexplained stories out there, we sit down, and we go through them, slowly and honestly. I don't rush and try to tell you what to believe, and I sure as hell don't pretend that I have it all figured out, because most of the time, nobody really does. Now recently we've been really caught up in aliens and conspiracies, and for good reason, but I thought it was time to switch things up. Tonight's case is one of the big ones. One of the ones that even people who don't follow this stuff have heard whispered about. It has everything. A struggling family, a creaking old house sitting on top of a hollowed out earth, a priest who wasn't supposed to be a priest, and two of the most famous and most controversial paranormal investigators in American history. A media circus, and at the center of it all, a question that people are still arguing about on the internet at 3 a.m, right now, tonight, while you're listening to this. This is the Smurl Haunting, West Pittston, Pennsylvania, 330 Chase Street. We're going to move into that house with the Smurls, room by room, year by year. We're going to sit in the rooms where they sat. We're going to wait in the dark with them for the thing that kept coming. So grab a drink, get comfortable, lock the door if it makes you feel better. It won't, but go ahead. And let me tell you about the family that said the devil moved in next door. Literally next door. Through the wall.
Fuel your hustle with protein-packed, flavor-stacked Roller Bites. These compact handheld snacks deliver bold taste and real protein, so you can stay full, focused, and moving. No mess, no slowdown. Big flavor, clean fuel, and the kind of bite that just works. From long days to late nights, Roller Bites are ready when you need them in flavors like Tequila Lime, Monterey Jack, and Buffalo Ranch. Grab them in your nearest convenience store or catch them on tour. Visit rollerbites.com for dates, locations, and more.
New England summers don't exactly ease you in. 1 minute the windows are open, the next your apartment feels unbearable. Well, meet Windmill Air. Windmill window ACs are sleek, they're quiet, and cool your space fast without the bulky eyesore. Rated the #1 easiest AC to install, Windmill lets you adjust temperatures right from your phone and, unlike traditional units, cools your room more evenly like central air. Shop Windmill online at windmillair.com or pick up an AC at your nearest Target or Home Depot. Windmill, modern air care your room deserves.
While every other channel is fighting for your customers' attention, podcasts are where they've already given it. No one accidentally listens to a podcast for 45 minutes. They choose to be here. They trust the voice in their ears, and when that voice talks about your brand, it doesn't sound like advertising. It sounds like a recommendation from a friend. Acast gives you that trust at scale. Digital precision, host-read authenticity, and performance data that proves it worked. Don't fight for attention. Buy it with Acast. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.
Now, before any of the scary stuff, and there's plenty of scary stuff, we will get there, you have to know these people, because that's the thing that gets lost when a case like this becomes a movie poster. These were real human beings with jobs and bills and a portrait of John Wayne on the wall. And to understand what happened to them, you have to understand what they'd already survived before they ever set foot in that house. So let's go back, not to 1985, but further to 1972. In June of 1972, a hurricane named Agnes came up the East Coast and stalled out right over Pennsylvania and the Susquehanna River, which is this big, lazy, beautiful river that runs through the whole valley. Now, if you've ever driven through Pennsylvania, you may have seen the Susquehanna River, and it looks terrifying from the road. It's super wide and it's huge, and the thing is, it's not very deep. Now, from this storm, the Susquehanna came up over its banks and just kind of took everything. Whole neighborhoods were underwater. Wilkes-Barre was devastated. It is still, to this day, one of the worst floods in the history of the state. People up there still measure time by it, before Agnes, after Agnes. And the Smurl family's home was in the path of it. Jack and Janet Smurl lost their house. It wasn't damaged, it was destroyed. Everything they'd worked for, every dollar of equity they'd built, was gone, sitting under a wall of brown river water that smelled like the bottom of the world. Picture working your whole life, blue collar, paycheck to paycheck, finally getting a little something of your own, a place with your name on the deed, and then standing on high ground watching a river swallow it in an afternoon, watching your furniture float away. So now they're starting over, from zero. Worse than zero, really, because they've got mouths to feed and no walls to feed them in. Now, Jack, John James Smurl, but everybody called him Jack, was born around 1942. He is a tough, quiet, hardworking guy, the kind of man who didn't say much and meant all of it. He spent 30 years working at the Topps chewing gum plant. You know Topps, the baseball cards, the bubble gum. Jack was a production manager there. He showed up, did the work, came home, and did it again. He was deeply and seriously Catholic, old school Catholic, the kind that actually went to Mass and meant it when he was there. The kind of guy who has holy water in the house and knows what to do with it. And he had this thing for old American Westerns. He loved John Wayne. He had a big portrait of the Duke hanging right there in the living room, like John Wayne was the patron saint of doing the right thing even when it costs you. And his wife Janet was the heart of the house. She raised their 4 daughters, Dawn the oldest, Heather, and then the twin sisters, Karen and Shannon. She volunteered, she helped to run an anti-drunk driving group at the local high school. She's the kind of woman who notices which neighbor is having a hard week and shows up with a casserole. She was a good person, salt of the earth. Nobody who knew her had a bad word. And that's going to matter a lot at the end. These were not strange people. These were not attention seekers, not occultists, not the family on the block everybody whispers about. They were church-going, dues-paying, lunch-pail Americans whose whole life was about keeping their heads down and their kids fed. So in August of 1973, with the last of their savings and whatever disaster money they could scrape together after the flood, Jack and Janet bought a house. It was a duplex on Chase Street in West Pittston. A double block, they call it up there. 2 separate homes sharing one common wall down the middle. Built in 1896, brick and wood frame. Almost 80 years old already when they bought it. 80 years of other people's lives soaked into the plaster. And here's a detail that also matters, so file it away in the back of your mind. Jack's elderly parents, John and Mary, they moved into the other half, number 328. Jack, Janet, and the 4 girls took 330. So you've got this whole multi-generational family, all packed in tight, sharing one wall. Grandparents on one side, 4 growing girls on the other, and that wall running right down the middle of everything. Jack's dad, John, was an industrial welder, a metal worker, a guy who understood, in his hands, how physical things are put together and how they come apart. And his mom, Mary, was even more devout than Jack, the kind of woman who'd spend whole afternoons with a rosary moving through her fingers. This was supposed to be the comeback, the fresh start, the do-over after the river took the first one. They poured everything into it, the money, the hope, the whole next chapter of their lives. Jack and his father worked on it with their own hands, nights and weekends, fixing it up room by room. And almost immediately, the house started doing things. Quietly at first, so quietly that for a long time, nobody let themselves call it anything at all. Now, I want to be really careful here because this is the part of the story where you, the listener, get to be the detective. Because what started happening in that house, at first, was nothing. Truly nothing. The kind of stuff that happens in every old house in America, every single night, in houses where nobody is being haunted by anything. It was little things. The toilets would flush on their own. You'd be lying in bed and hear it. Down the hall, that gulp and rush of water. And you'd tell yourself the float valve's sticky. Doors that they'd closed would be standing open in the morning. Doors they'd left open would be shut. You move into an 80-year-old house. The plumbing's temperamental. The doors don't hang right. The floors have slanted 3 different directions. Of course they are. You'd shrug it off. They shrugged it off. Every family in America with an old house shrugs this exact stuff off. Then, that first winter, January of 1974, over on the parents' side at 328, Mary buys a brand new red carpet for the living room. A nice one, a real splurge for them at the time. And a stain shows up on it. Just a dark, greasy, circular stain right in the middle of the room where nobody spilled anything. So they get it cleaned professionally. Heavy-duty chemicals, the works. It's gone and it's spotless. 2 days later, it's back. Same spot, same shape, same size. They clean it again, it comes back again. And a detail that's hard to shake. It always comes back in exactly the same place. Not a little to the left, not spreading. The same dark circle in the same square foot of floor, like something was marking a spot. Like something was standing there. Eventually, they just give up and throw the carpet out. Roll it up, drag it to the curb, because what are you going to do? It's a stain. It's annoying. It's not a demon, right? And see, that's the genius and the horror of how this thing, whatever it was, operated, if it operated at all. Because nothing in that first year would convince anybody of anything. A flushing toilet, a swinging door, a stain on a rug. You put all that in a row and a skeptic says, old house, end of story. A believer says something colder. A believer says it was being patient, that it was testing the locks, learning the family, who slept where, who scared easy, who'd believed and who wouldn't. Who'd be believed and who wouldn't. Getting comfortable, moving in slow, the way a thing moves in when it has decided it is never, ever going to leave.
When you need a snack that keeps up, reach for Roller Bites. Packed with protein and stacked with bold flavors like tequila lime, Monterey Jack, and Buffalo Ranch. These compact handheld snacks are built for busy days and nonstop schedules, delivering satisfying bites without slowing you down. No prep, no pause, just real flavor and real fuel in every roll. Find them at your nearest convenience store or see them on tour. Visit rollerbites.com for dates, locations, and more.
Do you keep hearing podcast ads, like this one, for example, but always wonder how you actually get involved with them for your own brand or organization? Well, it's easier than you think. We're Acast, and we give you the platform to do it all yourself. Browse thousands of popular podcasts, choose the shows that match your perfect audience, set your budget, and launch. And if you want a hand, our podcast specialists are there to help you launch with confidence. This is podcast advertising without barriers. Get started at acast.com/advertise.
Whatever this was, it never showed its hand early. It never did anything in that first stretch that a reasonable person couldn't explain away by breakfast. And if you wanted to design a haunting that a family could not prove, could not photograph, could not get anyone to believe, you would start exactly like this. Small, deniable, and patient. The events, though, did not stay small for long. Let's go into the living room. It's a late autumn evening, 1974. The coal furnace is running, so the whole house has that dry, dusty, warm, static smell. Old plaster, scorched dust on the radiators, a little bit of fresh wallpaper paste because they are still fixing up the place one wall at a time. Jack's just got home from a 12-hour shift at the gum plant. He is wrecked. His boots are still on, he's sitting in the dark, and the only light in the room is the blue-gray flicker of his brand new color TV. A real purchase. A thing he was proud of. John Wayne is up on the screen. The Duke's portrait is watching from the wall. The furnace ticks, and for a few minutes, this is about as peaceful as Jack Smurl's life gets. A tired man, a western, the rest of the house asleep upstairs. And then the television explodes. Not shorts out, not goes dark. It detonates. A loud, violent pop like a firecracker went off inside the cabinet, and flames come shooting out of the vents in the back, orange fire looking up the wall toward the wallpaper they just hung. The smell hits instantly, burning plastic and melting wires, that black chemical stink that gets in the back of your throat and stays there for days. Jack's up out of the chair before he's even awake, grabbing a wool blanket off the couch, beating the flames down, coughing, eyes streaming, fighting a fire in his own living room at the end of a 16-hour day, while John Wayne's portrait looks down on him through the smoke. Now, a skeptic will tell you, and they're not wrong, old TVs did this. Cheap electronics, bad wiring, a power surge through an antique electrical system. TVs caught fire in the 70s. It happened in regular houses to regular people. So Jack beats out the fire, opens the windows, airs out the room, and goes to bed shaking, telling himself it was just a TV. But here's the part that's harder to file away, because the house wasn't done with him that night. It was just getting started, and it waited for morning to show him the rest. The next morning, the house still reeks of burnt plastic. Jack and Janet walk into their bathroom. The bathroom they had just remodeled, spent weeks on, scraped together the money for. Brand new porcelain sink, brand new tub, fresh tile, fresh paint. The one nice room in the house. The room that was theirs, that the river hadn't touched, that they'd built back with their own hands. And the new tub and the new sink are gouged, with deep, long, savage scratches dug right down into the porcelain. White glaze knocked loose in chips that are lying there in the basin like teeth. And up near the ceiling, up where you need a ladder to reach, up where nobody had any reason to be, raked across the crown molding they'd just painted, 4 deep parallel claw marks, side by side, even spacing, dragging downward. Like something heavy had hung up there in the corner of the ceiling and dug in and pulled its hand down the wall. 4 marks, like fingers, a hand bigger than a man's. And the timing is the thing here, because this is the first time you can really see it. The fire was the loud thing, the thing that would send them to bed rattled. And then, while they were lying awake, while they were telling themselves it was nothing, something went into the one room they were proudest of and ruined it, quietly in the dark, so they would find it fresh in the morning when they were already shaken. One blow, then the next, time to land while the first one still stung. Around that same stretch, Jack's dad, John, the welder, the metalworker, the guy who solders for a living, he's redoing the water lines down in the basement. He solders 30 copper joints. He does it right. He's done 1,000 of these. He could do it in his sleep. His hands know the work better than his head does. All 30 leak at the same time. He resolders them. They leak again. A job that should take 20 minutes turns into hours, into days, turns into this proud old craftsman standing in his own basement, staring at his own work, not understanding what he's looking at. The pipes just will not hold water. And remember who's telling us this. Not a spooked teenager, not a frightened mother, a professional welder, a man whose entire trade, whose entire identity is making metal joints that do not leak. It's 1975, we're upstairs. The oldest daughter, Dawn, and she's 6 years old at this point, comes flying into her parents' bedroom in the middle of the night, screaming, The kind of scream that puts a parent on their feet before they're even conscious. And when they get her calmed down enough to talk, when they get her breathing again, she tells them there were people in her room, floating, human figures just hanging there in the dark above her bed, looking down at her. Jack goes and checks. Of course he does. You're a dad, your kid's screaming. He walks down that cold hallway in his bare feet and pushes open her door and turns on the light, and nothing. Empty room, curtains still. Just a little girl's bedroom with the blankets thrown back. A 6-year-old has a nightmare. That's all it is. Every parent listening to me right now has lived this exact night, has stood in this exact doorway. But here's the thing about the Smurls. They're starting to collect these nights. They're stacking up in a drawer somewhere in the back of the mind. The flushing toilets, the stain, the fire, the scratches, the pipes. And now the kids are waking up screaming. Each one, alone, is nothing. But you can't live in a each one alone. You live in the pile. And the pile is getting heavy. And then, through the late 70s and into the 80s, the house gets loud. Scratching inside the walls, metal on metal, dragging, slow, deliberate, like a fingernail being pulled the length of a pipe. Footsteps, heavy ones, in empty rooms, in the upstairs hall, on the stairs, the unmistakable weight of a grown person crossing a floor, in rooms where you can see with your own eyes that no one is there. And this is the one that really stands out. They start hearing grunting. Low, guttural, wet animal grunting. The people who were there described it sounding kind of like a pig. In the house, in the walls, behind the kids' headboards. And that sulfur smell, the rotten egg stench, rolling in and rolling out, never staying long enough to find the source. And then the beds start to shake. Not creak, but shake. Hard enough to wake you out of a dead sleep and leave you gripping the mattress in the dark. Your own heartbeat in your ears, asking the ceiling, what is happening? But the part that matters is the when of it. Not when the house is full and loud and busy, but at night, in the dark, in the bedrooms, when the family is most vulnerable, most alone, most afraid. That's when it comes. It doesn't rattle the beds at noon with the radio on. It waits for the lights to go out. It waits for them to be lying down, defenseless, hoping tonight's the night nothing happens. And then it starts. You can call that a coincidence. You can say, of course they noticed it more at night. Everybody does. But the family didn't experience it as a coincidence. The family experienced it as a thing that knew the difference between day and night, that preferred the dark, that seemed to wait for it. Now put yourself in this family's shoes. You've already lost one home to a flood. You've already watched everything you own float away once in your life. You've sunk every dime you have left into this house. And the house is doing this. And you can't sell it, because where would the money come from to move? And who on earth would buy it? And besides, you can't even explain to a buyer what's wrong, because what would you say? The pipes leak and the beds shake and something that sounds like a pig lives in the walls? They would laugh you off the porch. Janet is begging Jack more than once, and you can hear it getting more desperate each time. Let's get out. Let's just go. Let's take the girls and walk away from it. And Jack, you can almost feel it. Jack keeps saying the same thing. The only thing a man in his position can say. We can't. Everything we own is in these walls. We've got nowhere to go. We did this once already. I cannot do that to them again. They were trapped, financially, physically, every way that counts. If something in that house was intelligent, if something was choosing them, it had picked the perfect victims. A family that couldn't leave, a family with nowhere to run, no money to run with, and too much pride and too much love to abandon the only thing they had left. It didn't need to chase them. It just had to wait. and it had all the time in the world. So we're going to pause the story for a minute because we need to talk about Jack. And this is not a real fun section of the story. This is about a real man's body and a real man's suffering. And he's not here to speak for himself. What we know, and I want to lay this out fairly because this is one of the central mysteries of the whole case. When Jack was in his late 20s, he got meningitis. Really badly. And for those who don't know, meningitis is an infection that inflames the membranes around your brain and your spinal cord. It is very serious. It can kill you, and even when it doesn't, it can leave scarring. Permanent damage to the soft machinery up there that runs everything that you are. And in Jack's case, it left him with lasting problems, including significant short-term memory deficits. His memory was never the same after that. There were just kind of gaps in there, places where the day was supposed to be recorded and it wasn't. And then things got worse. By 1983, Jack was diagnosed with hydrocephalus, which is a buildup of cerebrospinal fluid inside the brain. Fluid that is supposed to circulate and drain just kind of doesn't. And the pressure builds up inside the closed box of your skull with nowhere to go. And untreated, that pressure will do things to a person. Causes confusion, causes trouble walking, headaches that don't quit, visual disturbances, and sensory distortions. The brain under that kind of pressure does not report the world back to you reliably because it can't, because it's being squeezed. So in 1983, Jack had brain surgery. They went in and implanted what's called and bear with me, I'm going to butcher this, ventriculoperitoneal shunt. I think I did pretty good with that. Basically, it's a little valve and a length of tubing that drains the excess fluid from his brain down through his body into his abdomen, where it then gets reabsorbed. This is a very real procedure. They do thousands of them. It saves a lot of lives. There's nothing really exotic about it. It's kind of a small mercy of modern medicine. But the thing about brain shunts, and this is medical fact, they fail pretty often. They get infected, they underdrain, so the pressure creeps back up, and then they can overdrain. Complications are common, and they can show up weeks or even months after the surgery, long after you've told yourself you're fixed. And when they do, you get exactly the symptoms you'd expect from a brain under siege. Confusion and memory gaps, and what the doctors call hypnagogic hallucinations. Waking dreams, seeing and hearing and feeling things that are not there, while you are fully, completely convinced that you are awake. Not, I think I saw something, but convinced. Now, where I want to be really careful, and I want you guys to hear me here, because this is a part that a lot of people get wrong. This does not mean Jack Smurl was lying. I want to be crystal clear about that, because a lot of people take this medical history and they go, see, case closed. The guy had brain damage, end of story, next. And that's a lazy way out. That's not how any of this stuff works. A man can have a damaged brain and still be telling you the absolute God's honest truth about what he experienced. The hallucination is real to the person having it. That's the entire nature of the hallucination. It's not a lie. It's not a trick. It's his own brain handing him a world and swearing it's the real one. If Jack said he felt a weight on his chest, he felt a weight on his chest. The only question, the only one, is where the weight came from. And on top of that, Jack's medical history does not explain everything. It's not even close. It doesn't explain the claw marks that the welder, his own father, found gouged into the porcelain. It doesn't explain what Janet experienced when Jack wasn't even in the room. It doesn't explain the fixture coming down on the kids in front of 3 witnesses. A shunt in Jack's head does not reach across the house and tear a light fixture out of the ceiling. But it's also true, and you have to hold on to both of these at the same time. The central witness to the most extreme, most private, most unverifiable events in the story was a man whose brain, through no fault of his own, was uniquely, almost perfectly capable of producing terrifying false sensations in the dark. That is just a fact. So which is it? Was Jack a victim of something supernatural? A victim of his own biology? Or, and this is the hardest one, both at the same time. A sick man in a sick house, each one feeding the other until nobody, not even Jack, could tell you where the house ended and the illness began. Now just hold on to that question throughout the rest of this. All right, so take a breath, get comfortable, or as comfortable as you're going to get, because now I'm going to walk you through the worst of it. And this is where the Smurl case goes from a creepy story to one of the most disturbing things in the whole catalog of American hauntings. So up to now, you could explain almost everything. Old house, bad wiring, man with a fragile brain, stressed out kids, and a pressure cooker. You could close the file. But starting around 1985, the family began reporting things that were no longer ambiguous. Things that, if they happened the way they said they happened, cannot be a swinging door and cannot be a sticky float valve.
New England summers don't exactly ease you in. One minute the windows are open, the next your apartment feels unbearable. Well, meet Windmill Air. Windmill window ACs are sleek, they're quiet, and cool your space fast without the bulky eyesore. Rated the #1 easiest AC to install, Windmill lets you adjust temperatures right from your phone and, unlike traditional units, cools your room more evenly like central air. Shop Windmill online at windmillair.com or pick up an AC at your nearest Target or Home Depot. Windmill, modern air care your room deserves.
Introducing America's Workforce Academy, built by Meta. Paid training, a job, and a path to America's future. Because the future is for everyone. Learn more at meta.com/America's Workforce Academy.
We started with the light fixture, April 9th, 1985. Shannon, 8 years old, gash across her forehead, and the smell of rot, the cold that came first. And that was the opening of the worst year. That was the thing announcing that the rules had changed. And before we really get into it, this thing had already done something to them as a family. Because the horror isn't just in the events. It's in the in-between. It's in the hours and days when nothing was happening and everyone was waiting for it to happen. By 1985, this is a house where nobody walks downstairs alone in the dark. Where the girls have learned, without ever being told, to sleep with a light on and to keep it on. Because the one time you reach over and click it off is the time that something's standing at the foot of the bed. Where Janet will stand at the top of the stairs at 2 a.m, needing a glass of water, and just not go. Because going means walking down into the dark part of the house by herself. And she's done that before, and she's not doing it tonight. Where the whole family has gotten very, very good at pretending everything is normal. Passing the potatoes, doing the homework, watching TV, while every single one of them is listening underneath to the house, waiting for the cold, waiting for the knock. That's the part that the movie can't really show you. The long, ordinary, terrified nights where nothing happens. Where you lie in bed rigid until 3 or 4 in the morning because you've learned that nothing happening is just the part before something happens. And sometimes the waiting went on for days. And the waiting was worse than the event, because at least the event ended. That summer, 1985, Jack is out back. It's a bright, ordinary afternoon, the kind of day that has no business holding anything bad in it. The family has a German Shepherd named Simon. He's 75 pounds, big, solid, healthy, full-grown dog. Not a little yappy dog, but the kind that makes you feel safer just by existing in the yard. Simon is out there with Jack, nosing around in the grass. And Jack watches, in broad daylight, eyes open, fully awake, sober, standing on his own 2 feet. He watches Simon get lifted up off the ground by nothing. The dog's legs come off the grass. 75 pounds of German Shepherd, hauled up into the air by nothing Jack can see, and then thrown. slams sideways against the wall hard enough that the animal hits with a sound Jack would never forget, and crumples and screams. That high, awful, almost human sound a dog makes when it's really hurt, when it doesn't understand what just happened to it any more than the man watching does. You can hallucinate a shadow. You can hallucinate a whisper. Can a man hallucinate his own dog being picked up and thrown across the yard in full sunlight? Maybe. The brain's a strange and broken thing, and Jack's more than most. But Jack swore it happened exactly like that. And by the accounts, the dog was hurt afterward. Not scared, but hurt. A haunting that hurts the family pet. That goes after the one creature in the house whose whole job, whose whole instinct, is to protect them. If you wanted to take away a family's last bit of safety, you would start with the dog. And then there were the nights. Late 1985, the dead of a Pennsylvania winter, the kind of cold that gets into the bricks and stays. Janet's lying in bed next to Jack, who's asleep. You can hear him breathing slow and even, the one comfort in the room. The radiator's knocking, and Janet wakes up. Except that she can't move. Can't lift an arm, can't turn her head, can't make a sound. Can't even get enough air behind her voice to whisper. Her eyes work, but that's it. Everything else is locked. Dead weight, a body that has stopped answering to her. She is awake, fully awake, trapped inside a paralyzed body in a freezing dark bedroom, and the only thing she can do is look. And up in the corner of the ceiling, up where the wallpaper meets the plaster, the corner she stared at 1,000 times falling asleep, she watches a darkness start to gather. A black mass pulling itself together out of the ordinary shadows. Thicker than dark should be. Oily almost. And it does not drift the way smoke drifts, the way a shadow moves when a car passes outside. It moves like it wants something. It moves like it's deciding. Like it knows she's awake and knows she can't move and is in absolutely no hurry. It slides down the wall, down the bedpost, slow. And then it's under the heavy wool blankets with her, down at the foot of the bed, and she can feel it coming up the length of her body. And then she feels the weight, cold and crushing, settling down onto her chest, pressing the air out of her lungs inch by inch until she can't get a breath, until there are little flecks of light at the edges of her vision. And she is screaming inside her own skull, trying to throw it off, trying to reach over and shake Jack awake 6 inches away, and nothing in her body will move. Her husband is right there, and she cannot reach him. And the thing on her chest is taking its time. Now, a skeptic hears that and says immediately, sleep paralysis. And honestly, they have a point. That is a textbook, picture-perfect, almost diagrammatic description of sleep paralysis. The waking up, unable to move, the crushing pressure on the chest, the dark figure in the corner of the room. Human beings have reported exactly this and exactly these words for thousands of years, in every culture on Earth, and they've called it the old hag, the night demon, the incubus, and the thing that sits on your chest. And we're going to come back to that at the end. But here's the thing before we file it away. Janet didn't have the word for it. Janet didn't know about REM, atania, or sleep stages. Janet just had the experience. And the experience, whatever its cause, was something that climbed up out of the corner of her bedroom, got into bed with her, and tried to crush her to death while her husband slept 18 inches away and she could not make a single sound to wake him. Whatever you believe about the cause, do not let the word sleep paralysis trick you into thinking it was gentle, because it was not. It was one of the worst things that can happen to a human mind. And then it went after Jack. Jack reported waking up to a whisper, a woman's voice, young and soft, almost tender, right in his ear. And in that half second of waking, he turns his head toward it, the way you would, half asleep, expecting Janet. And what's there instead is a shape. A shifting, smoky, half-formed female figure, cold as dry ice where it touches him, and it's moving up his body, up his leg. And what happened next, Jack and Janet both described as sexual assault by something that was not a person, something that was not even fully there. And it didn't happen once. So I want to slow all the way down on this because it's easy to just let it become another scary beat in a scary story. The spooky succubus. Ooh. And it absolutely should not be that. So strip away the question of what caused it for one full minute. Just hold the human fact of it. A husband and a wife lying in their own bed, in their own home, both reporting, separately and to each other, that they were being physically and sexually violated in the dark repeatedly by something they could not fight, could not clearly see, could not stop, and could not escape. Because they had nowhere to go and no money to get there. Their bed, the one place on earth a person is supposed to be safe, the place you retreat to when the whole world's gone wrong, their bed had become the most dangerous room in the house. And there's the intelligence of it again, if there was an intelligence behind it. It didn't just frighten them. It went after the intimacy between a husband and wife. It got into the one private, tender thing they had left and poisoned it. By the accounts, Janet started to wonder about Jack, and Jack started to feel ashamed and unmanned in his own house. Whatever it was, it found the seam in the marriage, and it worked it. Whether you think the cause was a demon or a sick brain or sewer gas or pure exhausted terror feeding on itself in the dark, the suffering in that house was real. That part nobody disputes. So listen to that again. Nobody disputes that. Even the people who think the whole thing was nonsense from top to bottom agree that this family was, in some genuine and terrible way, being tortured. And it kept layering on. The grunting in the walls, the footsteps in empty rooms, the smell of rot that would fill a room, thick and wet, and then vanish in a single instant like it had been switched off. The beds shaking, shadow shapes moving in the upstairs hall just at the edge of sight. And worse, a black mass, the same gathering darkness Janet saw, but now with two dull red points of light up where the eyes would be, sitting in the dark and watching. And the family started to come apart, not all at once, the way real families come apart, slowly, meanly, in the small hours. Janet started smoking heavily, stopped taking care of herself, got paranoid, started accusing Jack of things that weren't true. And you can see exactly where that came from. You can trace it right back to a smoky shape on her husband's side of the bed. Karen, one of the twins, would later spike a fever that wouldn't break, and the doctors couldn't explain. The girls were growing up inside of this. This was their normal. This was childhood. Light on, door watched, ears open, waiting. They were coming apart. As a family, as people, as a marriage. The house was eating them, one nerve at a time, and it was patient. It had always been patient. And finally, in their desperation, having gotten nowhere, having had priests come and bless the place and leave, having watched it just get worse, having exhausted every ordinary thing a family can do, the Smurls reached out to the two people in America most famous for exactly this kind of nightmare. A demonologist and a self-described clairvoyant, a husband and wife from Connecticut. You already know their names. Ed and Lorraine Warren. So we're going to end it here right now for part 1 of the Smurl Haunting. I wanted to stop it here. I thought this was a good transition point into kind of the next phase of the haunting, where we get Ed and Lorraine involved, where we get demonologists and priests and exorcisms and all that going on in the next episode. And then we're going to get into the believer side and the skeptic side and what people think actually happened to the Smurl family in Pennsylvania. What happened after all this, how it ended, and where they are now. And I'm going to give you my thoughts too on what I think actually happened and what side I lean on with this story. So this is a massive haunting case. And like I said earlier in the episode, there is debates going on literally right this minute on Reddit and other internet forums of people still to this day debating this case and what they think actually happened. So make sure to tune back in for part 2. And I may even release part 2 as a special bonus and still give you guys another episode next Wednesday for a new topic. So you might get this part 2 a little early. So keep an eye out for that. But thank you guys for being here for part 1. If you liked it and you can't wait for part 2, please go take the 30 seconds it takes to leave a rating, leave a review, share the show. It really means the world to me and the growth of this show. And we've come so far in a year, and I cannot wait for the next year. And I can only do that with all of your guys' continued support and help. And I appreciate every single one of you listening. Thank you so much for being here. Check out the social medias, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all at Paranormal Directive 13. And of course, obviously, the Patreon, patreon.com/Paranormal Directive 13, where for just $5 a month, you can become a member of the Directive. And you can help support the show. You can get a shout out on the show. And you can get ad-free episodes. So check that out and stay tuned for part 2 coming maybe this Saturday. We'll see. Depends if you guys are nice or not.
When you need a snack that keeps up, reach for Roller Bites. Packed with protein and stacked with bold flavors like tequila lime, Monterey Jack, and Buffalo Ranch. These compact handheld snacks are built for busy days and nonstop schedules, delivering satisfying bites without slowing you down. No prep, no pause, just real flavor and real fuel in every roll. Find them at your nearest convenience store or see them on tour. Visit rollerbites.com for dates, locations, and more.
New England summers don't exactly ease you in. 1 minute, the windows are open. The next, your apartment feels unbearable. Well, meet Windmill Air. Windmill window ACs are sleek. They're quiet and cool your space fast without the bulky eyesore. Rated the #1 easiest AC to install, Windmill lets you adjust temperatures right from your phone. And unlike traditional units, cools your room more evenly like central air. Shop Windmill online at windmillair.com or pick up an AC at your nearest Target or Home Depot. Windmill, modern air care your room deserves.
While every other channel is fighting for your customers' attention, podcasts are where they've already given it. No one accidentally listens to a podcast for 45 minutes. They choose to be here. They trust the voice in their ears, and when that voice talks about your brand, it doesn't sound like advertising. It sounds like a recommendation from a friend. Acast gives you that trust at scale. Digital precision, host-read authenticity, and performance data that proves it worked. Don't fight for attention. Buy it with Acast. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.